Before season 4 of Stranger Things came out, I was looking at the relationship of Mike and Will as a very close childhood friendship, and it is obvious that they're closer to each other than the rest of the group. They clock each other's emotions in a way that others don't. It's obvious that they're very important and very special to each other. Then season 4 came around, and it became painfully obvious that Will is in love with Mike, but Mike is clueless and doesn't know it, doesn't realize it. I had known about Byler for a while, but I assumed that in the show it would be a one-sided love, and I didn't think much about it. I viewed season 4, the first half of season 4, in a way that like two friends are losing each other because of long distance, unresolved trauma, emotional stuff, and then they need to spend some time together and talk about some things to find each other again. So I purely viewed it in the context of a teenage friendship, like when you move from one stage to another and you struggle to keep the relationships from your previous stage of life. Things changed for me this year. I was doing a rewatch of season 1 to 4 prior to season 5 coming out, and I think I was just watching more closely than I ever did before, and I started to see some signs, and I can say that I was converted to Byler. And the thing is, the signs that I saw, they were not even those small things where you compare behavior with Elle to behavior with Will. They were pretty obvious signs in my opinion. And also I'm seeing like online lots of videos that are like, if you're having Byler doubt, then blah blah blah. And it's interesting because it's the first time I'm seeing a ship doubt itself. Like, I've been around for a while and there were so many ships where that seemed less likely from my point of view, and people would never doubt themselves. So I don't think there are reasons for Byler doubt, is what I'm trying to say. I think that the doubt is unjustified. There are some pretty big signs in the show, and I'm not in any way professionally engaged with filmmaking or story writing or anything. I'm just an average TV show consumer, and I can see those signs. I think that there are pretty big ones in the show, even if you don't look into it too deeply and don't analyze it too deeply. What I want to say is that we don't know to this point what Mike's really feeling a lot of the time. He's the heart of the group, but we don't get his POVs a lot in the show. And at the beginning of season 5, after everything that happened to his family, like his parents are in hospital, his sister went missing, the world is about to be in shambles, he seems to be holding himself together, and that's showing that he's very good at repressing things. And that's just a quick disclaimer about how I think of Mike's character when I talk about Byler. So basically this video is about why I believe in Byler, and by that I mean that their relationship can either progress to a romantic stage from both sides, or Mike has some feelings for Will that are not purely platonic, even if he doesn't realize it. Right now we have seasons 1 to 4 that came out fully, and volume 1 of season 5, so that's what I'm going to be looking at today. I've split my points into two categories. So one is the show's plot points, so basically something that gets done by the characters that screams Byler to me. And category 2 is framing, symbolism, and parallels. These aren't directly done by the characters, but they're deliberate choices made by creators, in my opinion. In the show of this scale, every detail, even like books in the background, have their separate meetings where they decide what books are going to be in the background. So I think that most of these things were deliberately chosen to convey a point. So let's get to it. The plot points, right? The infamous airport scene where Mike cannot hug Will for some reason. And initially when I was watching the show, I thought that, yeah, it's friends that haven't seen each other in a very long time and things got awkward, they haven't talked much. And I also thought that it was Will who couldn't hug Mike and made it awkward because Will has a crush on Mike. But no, upon rewatch I realized that it's actually Mike who makes things awkward and doesn't know what to do, and that kind of confirms the dynamic shift on both sides. So it's not just Will who's struggling with his relationship with Mike and his feelings towards Mike, it's also Mike who is not completely clear about where he stands with Will and how he feels about Will. The "you didn't have to" scene. I couldn't believe my eyes on rewatch. I was like, oh, is this flirting? It was interesting to see it. I read somewhere, I think, or saw on TikTok maybe, that the looks between Mike and Will in season 4 was scripted. So looking at that scene, I was like, wow, so this was scripted. That's cool. That's not like the choices that the actors made by accident. So do with that what you will. Then we get to we're friends scene. What I took from that scene is actually that Will and Mike occupy a similar area in Mike's mind, and he's trying to separate them. If it was Lucas who moved away, for example, and Mike, and they got distant because they haven't talked for a while with Mike, would Mike be like, but we're friends? Seems quite unlikely to me. So it seems like Mike is trying to separate the feelings and put Will into that just friends box where, like, for example, Lucas and Dustin are. We also know that Mike did call a lot, even though in the scene Will is like, you called maybe twice or something. And then later in the show we see that Mike actually did call when Dustin says that Mike wouldn't stop complaining about Joyce having this job where she's always on the phone and the line's always busy. It's very much friends to lovers scene in my mind. That brings us to the painting. It was never addressed after that scene in the van where Will basically confesses his feelings to Mike, but Mike doesn't realize it. And it's too big of a setup not to be addressed later on. And I find it very hard to find a way where it's addressed in a way where Mike is, oh, so that was from you and you love me. Sorry, I don't love you, man. Or I don't think it's a setup for rejection. It's too big of a setup for it to be a rejection setup. So I think we're coming back to that painting, which is a very romantic painting, and it's going to be addressed. And Mike will realize something on his own, or maybe he'll find out by accident because he talked to Elle. But I think it's a very important thing. So that was season 4. That was like the things that scream byler to me in season 4. But let's go back a little bit, right? Season 3, Mike and Elle kissing in front of the closet. And I remember when I was first watching it, before my rewatch, I was a bit confused by the whole scene because I assumed that I assumed that there would be more happiness in this interaction and this kiss. And at the time, I think I assumed that it was like either bad writing or I just didn't understand it or anything. But now I think that it's an important scene where Mike does not feel what he expected to feel in that scene. It's the open eyes and the confused expression that like did it for me. Also the scene where Will brings in like the D&D set and Mike is, what if you want to join another party? And Will is, not possible. And then Mike smiles and it's such a genuine smile. And it's either a very like deep friendship smile or it's a romantic flirty smile. I can see it both ways, but having considered the kiss with Elle, I lean towards it being a flirty smile. And then when the buyers leave, Mike is very sad, obviously, and he looks at the buyer's house and he goes back to hug his mom, which is a parallel to when Will went missing and Mike doesn't know what to do and he's hurt and sad and he's crying. So I interpret that as byler proof. And now we're back to season 5, and throughout this whole show, Will has been so tortured the whole time. We never see the boy smile, like almost never. And at the beginning of season 5, he's just chill and happy. He seems fine. And when Will talks to Robin about like, how did you know that Vicky wanted to date? He doesn't seem tortured or sad about it. So I wonder, and then I wonder if something happened, first of all, right, in the 18 months, or if there were some signs, but also like Robin mentions the brush of the elbow and so on, and then literally we see the brush of the elbow even though it's not zoomed in very much, but we do see it. And yeah, I also struggle to think that Will would flirt with his friend or think about dating his friend if Mike and Elle were still going strong and were still happy together. Now there's also the scene where Mike is holding his hand on Will's body for too long when Will is not okay. And I think, and there is 2 things happening. So Lucas touches Will and Mike touches Will, and like Lucas pulls his hand away pretty quickly and Mike doesn't. So I think this could have been a scripted choice that the boys do that. And another plot thing, so there's the infamous Robin speech where she says, yeah, I didn't need Tammy to love me, to be myself and to love myself. I there is a lot of discourse on the internet if Mike is Will's Tammy or actually Vicky. I lean towards Vicky because I don't think Tammy that makes sense. Mike and Will have a pre-established relationship, and Vicky and Tammy didn't. It was just a crush that she idolized, and which is not the case with Will and Mike. They see each other mostly for who they are, and that's why I don't think Mike can be the Tammy for Will. So, to be clear, I think that these plot points are enough to me to consider Byler potentially becoming canon. I think that you don't even need to look into the show frame by frame and look at how people are placed in the frame and see like background signs or like clues placed in the background of the show by creators, and like into even the color coding, right? There was this whole color coding theory that Will and Mike are blue and yellow. I think that the plot points for like a regular viewer that I just mentioned are enough proof, really, to me. But yeah, let's get into category 2, which is framing, symbolism, and parallels that I saw on my rewatch. And they're not directly done by characters, but I think they were conscious choices by the creators to communicate some Byler implications to us. So, final shot of season 4, right? That's quite famous, where there is 3 couples, which is Joyce and Hopper, Jonathan and Nancy, and then there is Mike and Will, and Elle is far from them. So that framing seems intentional. The scene that I mentioned, the plot points, where Mike and Elle have their kiss at the end of season 3, they do kiss in front of the closet. They could have kissed anywhere else, really. The obvious framing between Vicky, her boyfriend, and Robin in between, and Elle and Mike and Will in between. Those are close enough together in the show that I, as a viewer, notice them. There is the closet sign in season 4, in the early episodes in Mike's room, and that closet gets broken in season 5. So I think it was a deliberate choice because it's too random of a thing for it not to be intentional. The We're Friends scene again, right, from season 4, where the In the Closet starts playing. There are some things that I see online that are considered Byler proof that I don't necessarily agree with, but I don't think they negate Byler. For example, the thing that I see a lot is Mike apologizing to Will after the fight and not really going after Elle when they break up. I don't think it's a romantic implication that Mike runs to Will to apologize. I think it's just because when Elle and Mike break up, it's normal by societal expectations. It reflects the gender roles at the time, while what Mike says to Will about not liking girls has implications for Will that are quite detrimental, right, at that time. Will was bullied for his presumed sexuality, so hearing something like that come from his very close friend and having it thrown in his face, it seems like a low blow. That's why Mike runs to Will, and not because he has romantic feelings for him at that point of the show. Then another thing that I keep on seeing is like Mike is not able to say I love you to Elle in season 4 because he has feelings for Will, actually. And I see this more like as an insecurity in his relationship with Elle rather than the relationship not being, valid or important enough to him. He just doesn't understand what he contributes to that relationship because, again, this relationship gets out of the societal norms because in his family, which is very traditional, we see that his mom is the emotional parent and his dad is like emotionally basically useless and cold. And he's probably the provider, but emotionally he's not close to the kids or his wife. So Mike is the heart, as Will says. So he is the one who has a lot of emotional contributions to the friendship, to the relationship. And I think that just feeds into his identity struggle and his insecurities about the relationship with Elle. He doesn't know what he's bringing to it. That's his identity struggle. And as viewers, we don't have a full picture from his perspective, so it could go many ways. The final scene in this category is let's go crazy together. This scene can be interpreted as an emotional, intimate moment between two childhood friends before the gender norms and societal expectations of what masculinity and male friendships look like kick in. So we only have 4 episodes left of season 5, and it feels like too little time to make byler canon, because it would technically be a new relationship, a new romantic relationship. But to be fair, I think all the foundation is there, and the whole slow burn setup has been, and the whole slow burn build up to this point has been set up on purpose. So right now we don't seem to see any romantic interactions between Elle and Mike. We know that the show doesn't tell us things a lot of the time, it shows us things. So for example, Nancy and Steve, right? We never saw them break up, but we knew they were broken up. I feel like after it's confirmed that Mike and Eleven are not in a romantic relationship anymore, we would not need a lot for byler to become canon. It would be like 1 or 2 scenes where either the painting gets involved, like they talk about it and everything gets like the feelings come to the surface, or it could be an emotionally charged moment with Vecna when someone's at risk and Mike understands his feelings for Will, or learns about Will's feelings for him, and like realizes that maybe it's not purely platonic on his side either. So many ways this could go, but I think that all the groundwork is already there. Even if you don't go too deeply, even if you don't look at every single small frame and try to do like analysis of the show, I think it's there to the naked eye. You just have to be open-minded to see it. And yeah, a couple scenes, and if it's shown in the right way, it's going to be great. I'm very hopeful. If we look at the part 2 trailer of season 5, we don't seem to see anything romantic between Will and Mike, or Eleven and Mike. And I'm thinking that maybe if Mike and Eleven had been still romantically involved, we would see a more emotionally charged moment, like a more romantic moment, rather than hand on the shoulder and head on the cheek before they probably go into a huge adventure that might kill them all. So yeah, all the groundwork is there. It just needs to be shown the right way to the audience, and I think it would be earned. I think it would be earned, and it will pay off.